Hi guys, Literary Prepper back again. So this morning I was going through, I had a couple of boxes that I needed to rearrange because I wasn't completely happy with what I had in those boxes, and I can get a little bit lazy sometimes and just sort of throw things in and put the box away without actually doing a count. So I went through this morning and actually did an official count of what I have in that particular wardrobe. So the boxes that I had, I wound up pulling it all out and reorganizing them into, two sort of rough categories. So what I do when I go shopping is I don't really have the money to just put a couple of grand onto preps in one hit. So like many people, I buy extra bits and pieces whenever I go shopping. So I buy things when they're on special. I might buy like 4 deodorants at a time, or I might buy the bigger soap packets or multiple soap packets, or what else? All the fire study things were on special this week, so I bought a whole heap of things like matches and lighters and little square dealies that you use as the fire starters. They were all on special, so I got a few extra of those. So as far as what I store and where I store it, so as I've said before, I like to store things in manageable boxes so that if we have to evacuate, we can just Tetris it all into the car and disappear, rather than having to sort of fiddle around with what is where, and basically waste all of our time looking for stuff around the house. But I don't get too hung up on necessarily storing all of my toilet paper together, or all of my fire stuff together, or all of my pest stuff together, or anything like that. It kind of winds up being a little bit jumbled. So the 2 boxes that I separated out this morning is, one is kind of medical and toiletries, and one is kind of kitchen and miscellaneous stuff. So with the toiletries one, that's fairly straightforward about what you would find in there, but I don't store all of my soap together. I don't store all of my toilet paper together. The reason for that is that that would involve having too many little hidey holes all over the house for where I would actually be storing that stuff before I box it up, and that's just not practical. Because I also really try hard to keep my preps away from my main food so that I know exactly what I have, because it's very easy to mix everything up and then not have what you think that you have. So I don't separate things out. So things like dog food, I have a section where all of my standard size cans are stored together. I store my dog food with my tin tomatoes, with my canned corn, all that sort of stuff, canned beans. That's all stored together in the one section because they're all the same size. They stack very easily and very neatly, and you can just sort of close the cupboard and walk away and know that all of that like stuff is together. Similarly, I have a section for cans that are not a standard size. So things like, and packaged things that are not a standard size. Things like honey, maple syrup, tuna cans, salmon cans. For some reason, I want get special and taper the can down so that it's not I don't know why they do that. It makes it very difficult when you're trying to, put things away in a cupboard, even if it's just for daily use. So if you're a can designer, stop. I also have separate, single serve cans of beans. I think they're more designed for kids rather than for adults or for actual cooking purposes. I feel like they will come in handy one day for something, maybe, a trade thing, or if the neighbors come knocking up your, have a can of beans. I'm not that mean. Or am I? Anywho, so I don't sort of get hung up on storing all of those things together. So honey, for example, is one of those things where I, try to keep that sort of somewhere where I can easily grab it, because honey should also, depending on what other products you have, honey should really also be in your medical kit. Honey is one of these really, really awesome products that, whilst they print a use by date on the jar or the container or whatever, if you store it properly, and it's 100% honey, then that stuff won't go off. They've dug that out of ancient Egyptian tombs and found that it's still edible, like, thousands of years later sort of thing. So a couple of years in a cupboard is not going to hurt your honey. But around here in particular, you can get what they call Melaleuca honey. So that's just a fancy way of saying that the bees have gotten into the tea tree plants, and there's concentration of the tea tree pollen in the honey. So you can get different levels of that. There's, just this stuff that you see at the supermarket that just has Melaleuca on it as a marketing thing. There's, I've also seen a 200, 250 and 500 level. I'm sure there are other levels, but those are the main ones that I've seen. So the higher the number, the higher the concentration of the pollen stuff in the honey, and that's stuff they actually use in hospitals and the burns units, because it's magic. So you want that sort of stuff in your preps. The specific Melaleuca honey is very expensive. So if you can't afford that, don't stress. You don't need Melaleuca honey. It's just really, really good stuff if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, normal honey will do the trick. So honey, like salt and sugar, will dry stuff out. So if you have a bacteria that's in a cut, it will dehydrate it and kill it. It's brilliant. So it's not just something that you can put on toast or make a really nice cake with or whatever. It's stuff that you should have in your medical kit, as well as Glad wrap. So when I divided these two boxes this morning, my Glad wrap wound up going into the box with the rest of the kitchen bits and pieces that I put aside. So in my spare kitchen stuff, I also have spare utensils. So things like tongs, can openers, things like that you will actually need. And things like chicken skewers can easily be weaponized. You can find videos on YouTube. I'm not planning on making one, but if you're in a pinch, then you can make weapons out of bamboo skewers. So I've got those sorts of things in there. Now, one of the reasons, and the boxes that I separated out, because I had bought more stuff that I was also adding to those boxes, then I wound up with less space in the original one than what I had planned on. So the box that I had all of my kitchen stuff in, the first sort of layer of that is now toilet paper. So I think I got about 10 rolls of toilet paper into that particular box. Do I care? No. If we're in a hurry and we pick up that box, bonus. You've got extra toilet paper. The reason why I don't like stocking things all together is that if I put all of my soap and disinfectants in one box, all of my fire starting stuff in another box, and something happens to one of those boxes, then I don't have that stuff. Especially if I'm in a situation where I can only grab a very small portion of what I have. So if you mix it up a little bit, then you've got less of a chance of not having anything. The other thing that I really like to do, and I don't really count these as food preps, it's more like a flavoring option. It's like little, what do you call them? Dried packets of soup mix that you just add water to and mix it up. So it's technically food, but if I told my husband to live on it for a week, he would probably not be very happy with me. And rightly so, because it really is just flavoring. So I try to hide those in wherever I can, because they don't weigh very much. They're probably, you know, not going to expire this century. So, you know, if you wind up opening up your toiletries and you wind up with a whole heap of extra soup packets, no one's going to complain. So that's just how I like to do things. It makes it easier when you are buying things in dribs and drabs. Obviously with your bigger sort of things like your rice and your beans, you want those together and you want those clearly labelled, because those are actually firm staples. But as far as your little sort of bits and pieces that you sort of just collect along the way, don't get caught up in having, you know, all like items together. It doesn't matter if you don't have one big box of toothpaste. It doesn't, I think that's my little boy. It doesn't matter if, you know, you only have, you know, a couple of tubes here and a couple of tubes there, and, you know, every box has a little bit of something different in it. I think I'm going to have to cut this short. I'll talk to you guys later, but that's what I wanted to sort of talk to you about, was just, you know, it doesn't matter that, you know, your preps aren't perfect. If you have a mixed box, that's okay. Life is mixed. Situations are mixed. I've got to go because this is mixed. I'll talk to you guys later.